Good day everyone, I am Marifeca Bilin, one of the students in Marikina Polytechnic College, a Bachelor of Technical Vocational Education teacher, major in Garments, Fashion and Design. Today, I will teach you on how to pattern, layouting, and sewing of Peter Pan collar. May you enjoy watching!
Okay, before we start, of course, we should consider the following tools and materials. We have Manila paper, hip curve, L-square, ruler, tape measure for measuring tools, pencil and eraser, scissors, pins, fabric, and of course, the sewing machine. Now, let us proceed to the pattern making. In your pattern or Manila paper, fold it into half to get the center fold. To draft pattern of Peter Pan collar, first get your back body's foundation pattern. Then trace from the back necklines down to the shoulder. Next is get your front body's foundation pattern. Before tracing the front neckline, measure 1 inch for overlap inward from the shoulder and connect it between neckline and shoulder. Next is from the overlap, trace the front neckline up to the center front of the bodies. The overlap will help you get a shape that will fit flat to your shoulders. Measure 1 inch from the center front of the bodies inward and connect it to the neckline. On top of this guideline, you can draw the collar you want, but the normal size of Peter Pan collar is 8 cm. Let us say I want 3 inches width collar, and then mark 3 inches around the neck, and connect it. Draw a curved line using freehand. Also, don't forget to put label on the front and back necklines. Moving on to the cutting. Before we cut, put pins to secure the pattern. Then measure 3/4 inch for seam allowance before cutting. Remove the pins and make a notch at the center fold using scissors. Now, we are done in pattern making of Peter Pan collar. Okay, let us proceed to the layouting of pattern into the fabric. In your fabric, it should be folded into 2 before layouting. We need 2 of these because it's going to be facing each other. To get the perfect size of the collar, measure 6.5 inches from the center fold of the pattern to the edge of the fabric. And put pins to avoid moving the pattern from the fabric before cutting. Remember, don't lift up the fabric when you are cutting to avoid an even result of the collar. Before removing the pins, put mark at the center fold of the fabric using dermatograph pencil. Now we are done in layouting the pattern into the fabric. It's time to attach the collar to the neckline of the bodies. But first, you need to cut a 1 1/8 inch wide strip of fabric on the bias at 45-degree angle. From the straight line, measure 1 1/8 inch width for the bias strip. Then draw a line of 8. Always remember that put pins before you cut the fabric. Now we are done in layouting the collar and the bias. After layouting, use ironing board and iron to flatten the collar and bias before sewing. Sew the collar from seam allowance all around the edge. Then, reverse the collar and sew. Put a notch at the center fold using trimmer. Moving on, attaching the collar into the bodice. Sew 1/4 inch at the neckline of the bodice before attaching the collar. Face the bodice and the collar together and put pins before sewing. Also, attach the bias into the collar and the bodice using pins before sewing. Cut the excess fabric of your bias strip. Sew the collar and the bias together with the bodice into 1/4 inch. Remove the pins one by one when you are sewing. From the bias strip, fold into two around the seam allowance of the collar and neckline to cover up the excess fabric. Put pins on it to secure before sewing. Again, remove the pin one by one before sewing. Now, we are done attaching the Peter Pan collar to the bodies. Now, this is the finished output of Peter Pan collar. Thank you for watching!